Before we talk about Eala and Rome, before we talk about Rafael Nadal walking down to a practice court or Tony Nadal rebuilding a 20-year-old's footwork or the cold mathematics of the WTA ranking system, we need to talk about something smaller, something that sounds almost too simple to matter. We need to talk about sliding. Not the way commentators say it, she's sliding well today, Chris, but the actual physics of it. The way clay demands that you arrive at a ball not with your last step planted but with your momentum already carrying you past the contact point, your back foot dragging through the red dust like a rudder. It feels, for the first 100 times you try it, like falling. Like your body is making a decision that your brain has not yet approved. Your weight goes one way, your leg goes another, and if you are a hard court player, someone raised on clean stops, sharp cuts, explosive changes of direction, your entire nervous system rejects it. You feel slow, you feel stupid, you feel like you forgot how to run. That was Alex in Rome last year, May 7, 2025. The Foro Italico, that absurdly beautiful stadium where the clay is so red it looks like crushed brick from another planet. She was 19 years old making her Italian Open debut, and she walked onto that court against Marta Kostyuk and lost 6-1, 6-1 in 96 minutes. One game, 96 minutes to win one single game. It wasn't just a loss, it was the kind of loss that follows you. The kind that lives in the back of your throat every time you see red clay again, because clay wasn't just a surface she was still learning. It was a surface that seemed to actively reject her. Everything that made her dangerous on hard courts, the pace she could generate from nothing, the sharp angles she could carve, the explosive first step that made her feel like she was cheating, none of it translated. She pushed off and the clay gave way. She tried to stop and she kept moving. She tried to slide and she stumbled. And the people closest to her, the coaches, the family, the small inner circle who had watched her become the first Filipino to win a Grand Slam junior title, who had watched her qualify for Miami and then make the semifinals and turn the entire tennis world toward Manila, they carried a quiet, brutal fear through the rest of that season. The fear was this: clay might be the thing that keeps her from becoming truly great. Not injuries, not competition, just the surface, just the red dirt. That fear didn't go away, it just went underground. Now let's talk about rankings, because rankings are not about who is playing well right now. Rankings are about debt. The WTA uses a rolling 52-week calendar, which is a polite way of saying that every point you earned last season has an expiration date. You don't get to keep anything. You performed brilliantly a year ago and the system says, "That was lovely, now show us again." Alex reached her career-high ranking of number 29 in March of this year. Just weeks ago, just a breath ago, and then she watched that number slip to 41. 6 spots. That sounds small, but it wasn't form. It wasn't that she forgot how to play. It was math. The extraordinary points she earned during last year's Miami semifinal run, that breakthrough, that moment when the whole world finally saw what the Philippines had been watching for years, those points expired off her ledger. They vanished. The system collected what it was owed. So she arrived in Rome this week with almost nothing to defend. 10 points. That's the ghost of last year's 6-1, 6-1 loss, now paradoxically transformed into her biggest advantage. 10 points, that number is so small it feels like a typo. When you have 10 points to defend, every point you win this week is pure gain. Every round you advance moves you forward on the rankings, not sideways, not holding steady, but forward. The math has finally swung in her favor. For the first time in months, the system is not chasing her, she is the one who gets to chase. But math alone doesn't win matches, and the draw she is stepping into is not kind. Kostyuk is in the field, the same Kostyuk who took her apart in 96 minutes. Leylah Fernandez is there, Fernandez, who beat her in Stuttgart this year 6-1, 6-4 on clay. Elise Mertens is there, Mertens, who beat her in Madrid 6-2, 6-1 on clay. 3 players who have either beaten her this season or humiliated her on this surface before. The draw is not just difficult, it is a hallway of mirrors. Every potential path leads back to a loss she has already lived. And her European clay season before Rome has been rough. That's the honest word for it. Stuttgart, first-round exit to Fernandez. Madrid, second-round exit to Mertens. Those scorelines sting not just because of the losses themselves, but because of what they suggest, that even after all the work, all the hours, all the quiet mornings on empty courts, clay is still the surface that doesn't belong to her yet. Greg Rusedski, former world number 4, now one of the most vocal supporters she has in the commentary box, a man who genuinely loves her game, said it honestly after Madrid. He didn't sugarcoat, he said the margins weren't close. And when a supporter that loyal says something like that out loud, you don't brush it off, you sit with it, you let it land. So now we arrive at the question that makes this whole story worth telling: what has Alex been doing between those losses? Because if you only look at the results, first round, second round, out, you might assume she has been treading water. Or worse, that the arc of her career has already peaked, that the Miami semifinal was a beautiful anomaly, and that the ranking slide from 29 to 41 is just gravity doing its work. But that assumption would miss everything. It would miss the quiet, obsessive, almost ridiculous level of preparation that has been happening off the scoreboard. It would miss the fact that about 3 weeks before her flight to Rome, Alex was back at the Rafa Natal Academy in Majorca. And if you don't understand what that place actually is, not as a tourist attraction, not as a brand, but as a working environment, you will misunderstand the entire story. Joan Bosch is her primary coach. He has been with her since her junior years. He is the engineer, the architect, the man who constructed everything she has become. He was in her box during the Miami semifinal. He speaks about her the way architects speak about buildings they have spent years designing. And earlier this season, he sat down with a tennis publication and said something that I don't think got nearly enough attention at the time. He was describing what it's like to work at the Natal Academy with the coaches and the specialists and the people who surround the place. And he said it's like being at NASA, not like being at a good training facility, not like being at a high-performance center. NASA. He chose that word deliberately. He was describing an environment where the science of tennis is applied at a level that most players on tour will never experience, where every movement is analyzed, where every technical flaw is not just observed but modeled, simulated, corrected, where the people who built the greatest clay court player in history are just there, walking around, watching, available. And here is the part of the story that still feels like fiction, even though it has been reported, even though Bush said it himself, even though it happened. According to Bush, roughly 3 weeks before Rome, they were deep into a serve session on one of the academy's clay courts. No announcement, no fanfare, no cameras, just Alex and her coaches working. And then Rafael Nadal himself walked down to the court. Not because anyone asked him to come, not because it was scheduled. He just came down, he watched. And then the greatest clay court player in the history of tennis started giving Alex advice on her serve. He came down and gave some tips, Bush said, because she's left-handed like him, because the left-handed serve on clay is a different geometry, because the spin kicks differently, because the angle of attack changes everything. And he said it helped a lot. Later, Rafa actually hit with her. Let me say that again. A 20-year-old from the Philippines, a player who was competing in ITF Futures not that long ago, stood on a clay court while Rafael Nadal corrected her serve from the perspective of his own left-handed experience, and then they hit together. For fun, for the love of it. Because that is what happens at that place. But it didn't stop with Rafa. Bush also mentioned that Carlos Muñoz, another legend, another icon, a former world number one, a man who has coached Rafa to multiple Grand Slams, has been part of the environment around her this spring. And sitting above all of it, coordinating directly with Bush, is Tony Nuttall, Rafa's uncle, the man who built Rafa's entire clay court architecture from the ground up. The coach who was courtside for all 14 Grand Slam titles, including every single one of Rafa's 10 Italian Open championships. 10 Italian Opens, that is the tournament she is playing this week. That is the red clay she is stepping onto. And this spring, Tony Nuttall became her clay court specialist. Think about that for a moment. The woman who lost Sucks 1 in Rome last year is now preparing for Rome under the direct guidance of the man who made Rome his private kingdom 11 times over. 11 times, not as a player, as a coach, as the architect, as the person who understood before anyone else how to construct points on that specific Atulpka clay. How is that not the most cinematic subplot in tennis right now? But here's the thing about cinematic subplots: they don't guarantee results. They just make the results feel more devastating or more glorious. So let's talk about what Bush actually said about her improvement, not the hype, the specifics. He said clay was where she was more raw, where she had more to improve. That's honest. That's a coach admitting that his player had a weakness. He said she is now moving much better on the surface. And then he said the specific thing that cuts right to the heart of what Kustok exposed 12 months ago. He said she is sliding now, which is not easy when it doesn't come naturally. Sliding, back to that word. Sliding on clay is not a cosmetic skill. It is not something you add to look graceful. It is the single movement pattern that separates clay court players from hard court players who happen to be playing on clay. When you can slide, you can defend shots that would otherwise be winners. You can stay in rallies that would otherwise eat you alive. You can construct points instead of just surviving them. You can make your opponent hit one more ball and then one more and then one more until they make the mistake. When you can't slide, clay punishes every single step. You play like you're running on ice in the wrong shoes. You arrive at every ball late. You are always off balance. You have to guess because you can't react. The fact that Bush flagged her sliding improvement specifically, not her power, not her serve, not her forehand, is him telling the world the exact vulnerability that made that Rome debut so brutal has been identified, targeted, and rebuilt. They didn't try to make her a different player. They didn't try to turn her into Rafa. They just fixed the thing that was broken. Now let's step away from the technical side for a moment. Because there is another dimension to Alex's story that you cannot ignore if you want to understand why this moment feels so significant. It happened on April 20th in Madrid, the Lara's World Sports Awards, one of the most exclusive events in global sport. Olympic champions, world record holders, the absolute pinnacle of athletic achievement, all gathered in one room. And walking that red carpet, surrounded by all of them, was a 20-year-old tennis player in a custom Filipina gown. The fabric was punya, one of the most revered traditional textiles in the Philippines, handwoven from pineapple fibers, delicate, translucent, impossibly fine. The gown was designed by her uncle Rut Ullah. It was sewn and shipped from Manila to Madrid in just a matter of days. When she spoke to the press that night, she didn't perform humility. She didn't say, "I can't believe I'm here." She was direct. She said she had always dreamed of wearing a Filipina on a major red carpet. She said Lara's was the perfect moment, and she meant it. The WTA posted that arrival on their Instagram, 78,000 likes, nearly 900 comments. She wasn't a footnote at that event, she was the conversation. And I think about what that image means, not for tennis fans, not for rankings watchers, for a 12-year-old girl growing up in Quezon City or Cebu or Davao watching that on her phone after school, because Alex is not just carrying a flag. She is expanding what is possible in the imagination of an entire generation of Filipino athletes. She is making visible something that was previously invisible, that a player from the Philippines can walk the same red carpet as Olympic champions, can hold her own in that company, can wear her nation's fabric and be celebrated for it. Manny Pacquiao said it on Tagalog television. He said watching her makes him proud because she is Filipino. He said the Philippines needs more like her. When Manny Pacquiao, arguably the most famous Filipino athlete in history, a man who transcended his sport in ways that almost no one else has, stops to publicly praise your tennis player, you have crossed into something cultural, something larger than rankings, something larger than any single tournament result. Lara's doesn't invite athletes who are trending, Lara's invites athletes who are ascending. And they saw in Alex something permanent, not a moment, a trajectory. Which brings us back to the clay. After Madrid, after that second-round exit against Mertens, Alex did something that reveals more about her character than almost anything else this season. She was scheduled to play a WTA 125 event in Catalonia the week before Rome. A small tournament, relatively low stakes, a chance to get matches on clay before the big stage. She withdrew not because she was injured, because she made a choice. She decided that rest, recovery, and full preparation for Rome mattered more than extra matches and extra points. That is not a small thing. On the tour, there is always pressure to play, to grind, to accumulate. The machine wants you to keep feeding it. She looked at what she needed most, not more matches but better preparation, and she chose it without apology. And then, hours after leaving Madrid, she posted on Instagram. One of those quiet, unguarded moments that tells you everything about where someone's head is. She wrote that she was grateful for her time there, and that she would be back stronger, not devastated, not defensive, not making excuses, grateful and forward-looking. Then she closed the phone and started preparing for Rome. There are players in this sport who respond to bad losses by hiding, by downgrading their schedule, by finding smaller stages where the pain won't sting as much. Alex did the opposite. She came back to the exact city, the exact tournament, the exact red clay that handed her the most embarrassing scoreline of her young career, and she walked through those gates as if she had been planning this return for 12 months. Because she has. Now let me be honest with you. Not the kind of honest that sounds like hype, but the kind that sounds like a conversation between people who actually care about tennis. The losses in Stuttgart and Madrid were heavy. They were not close matches. The margins were not small. Kostyuk, Fernandez, Mertens, they are not going to make anything easy. Kostyuk in particular still carries the ghost of that 6-1 demolition. She knows what she did to Alex on that court. She knows how it felt. And she is a ferocious clay court competitor. If Alex runs into her again this week, it will not be a gentle test. It will be the exam. And we will find out very quickly whether the work done at the Natal Academy was preparation or just narrative. But here is what I keep coming back to. Every single improvement that Bosch described, the sliding, the movement, the serve, the clay-specific strategy, all of it was designed specifically for this moment, not for the future in some abstract sense, for Rome, for Roland Garros, for these exact 5 weeks in front of her. They did not build a long-term clay project. They built a missile aimed at this window. And the points math is genuinely remarkable when you map it forward. She has 10 points to defend in Rome, and 10 at Roland Garros, 20 total points across the 2 biggest clay events on the calendar. 20, that number is so small it is almost comical. The entire upper half of the WTA rankings is sitting there like an open road. A run to the 3rd round in Rome is net positive. A quarterfinal pushes her back toward her career high. A deeper run, anything beyond that, starts making conversations about the top 32 and automatic Grand Slam seeding feel real before Paris. Because Roland Garros opens on May 24th, Wimbledon follows after that. The clay block she is in right now is not just about clay. It is the foundation for the most important stretch of tennis she will play in her young career. And she built that foundation at NASA, with Rafa's hands on her serve, with Tony Nadal reconstructing her footwork, with Carlos Moya watching from the side, and she is walking into Rome with almost nothing to lose and everything to gain. 12 months ago, this city handed her one game. She did not delete that memory, she did not try to forget it, she used it, she studied it. She brought in the greatest clay court minds alive, literally the two most significant figures in the history of clay court tennis, and she said, "Show me what I was missing." And now she is back. This is not the story of a player who has already conquered clay. I want to be completely clear about that. That would be a lie, that would be the kind of hype that helps no one. This is the story of a player who has decided she will. There is a difference between those two things. One is a result, the other is a commitment. And everything she has done this spring, every choice, every session, every conversation, every sacrifice, every early morning, every late night on the practice court, every time she slid and fell and got back up and slid again, everything points in one direction. She chose Rome, she chose the hard surface, she chose the ghost. She could have played a smaller tournament, she could have avoided the court where she lost 6-1, 6-1, she could have taken the easier road, the quieter return, the softer landing. She did none of those things. She walked straight back into the exact place that broke her. And when you watch her walk onto that Foro Italico clay this week, when you see her in her match, when you watch her move, when you watch her slide, understand what you are actually seeing. You are not watching a player trying to prove something to critics. You are not watching a player trying to silence Twitter or justify a ranking or live up to a highlight reel. You are watching a player prove something to herself. The coronation hasn't happened yet. The victory hasn't been writ. The story is still being built, rally by rally, point by point, slide by slide. But she is already in the building, and this time she knows exactly where to stand.